We're good.
Hey guys, welcome back to a Gym Girls Unfiltered. So today's gonna be a fun one. We wanted to chat a lot about our experience as far as like the nutrition side of things. So we've kind of dabbled in quite a few things when it comes to meal plans or macro approach. And we get a lot of questions from you guys about like, do you prefer taking a macro flexible dieting approach or a meal plan? And I really think that there's a time and a place for both of them. So we're just going to kind of chat about what things look like in terms of nutrition there. But we'll introduce ourselves. I am Alani.
I'm
I
Caroline.
I am Kate, and we're so glad you guys are back. I think a good way to kind of start this off would be kind of to define what macros are and what meal plans are, because I have people come up to me at work and they're like, "What did you say? What is a macro?" So macronutrients, that's going to be your protein, carbs, and fats. And when we say we track our macros, we pretty much we have certain daily goals we strive for. So example, like maybe like 200 grams of carbs, 100 grams of protein, and 50 grams of fat. And those are the numbers we hit. Or a meal plan is like a structured eating, like given to you by your coach or something you write out yourself that tells you what exactly you're going to eat. So Caroline and Alani, I know you both do macros. Can you kind of explain like how you kind of set up your days every day?
Yeah, Alana, you can go first.
Absolutely. So this is something that I've definitely done both, and especially with all of my one-on-one clients for sure. I always lean towards flexible dieting because I feel like if you're a beginner, it's really valuable to learn how to approach your days and how to, like, say you have a social outing or a birthday party. I feel like it's super important to know how to approach those types of things. So as a beginner, I think if you're relying on a meal plan, it's not going to be as sustainable long term. With that being said, all of us have a really good foundation of how to approach our nutrition. So now I'm still in flexible dieting since I am like kind of post show and not in a bodybuilding prep. So how I approach it, I would say, is right now I'm reverse dieting. So like I'm bringing my calories up right now. But I think one of my biggest things with like structuring my days would be kind of approaching it like it is a meal plan. So all the night before or the morning of, pre-track my day, and I try and focus on spreading out my protein evenly with however many meals I'm going to have, like 4 to 5, I usually say. And then usually one of them is like a sweet treat at the end of the night, like a Greek yogurt bowl or something like that. Now that I'm incorporating like more flexibility, or an Ninja Creamy, but I pre-track my day. I put in what I'm going to have for my breakfast, for my lunch, for my dinner. And then I can adjust things to make sure that I'm hitting my protein goal, my carb goal, my fat goal. And then when that day rolls around, like today, I follow it like a meal plan. And I feel like I have less food noise when I approach it that way. But there, I could ramble on so much about like stuff like that. So, Caroline, how do you approach it?
Yeah, so I've always been on a macro-based plan since the beginning of my fitness journey. My first coach put me on macros, and then I'm on macros right now. So I approach it the exact same way. I log my food either the night before or the morning of, and exactly what I'm going to have for that day, because in the beginning of my journey, I would just track as the day went on. And then at the end of the night, I felt like I was getting stuck having all these random numbers, and I'd have to eat like a huge amount of, XYZ, and have like a ton of fats left and no carbs. And it's like, well, what the heck do I eat? Or I'd have like a ton of carbs and no protein. So it literally left me playing like a game of Tetris trying to fit in to hit my macros. So I learned that pre-tracking either the night before or the morning of definitely helps with that. And I've been doing that ever since. But I will say a lot of people think that being on a macro-based meal plan is restrictive, and people are always like, why do you track your macros? Like, it's so restrictive. But I think that it is honestly less restrictive than a meal plan to some extent when you need to take that certain approach, just because realistically you can eat whatever you want as long as you do make it fit in your macros. So like you said about that flexible approach that you kind of take, it's like if I want a yogurt bowl, I can fit that in. If I want a cookie, I can fit that in, instead of feeling like I have to eat a specific food. However, recently I am still on macros, but I have been following Kate's meal plan, which I've actually been loving, which she'll talk about. So I feel like the approach that I've been taking recently has helped, because I am following a meal plan per se and eating the same thing every day, but I have different amounts of it each day. So if I'm like more hungry at night, I'll have more cream of rice at night and, you know, less of something in the morning. So I still feel like I have that flexible approach of macros to play around with the amount of the food that I'm eating, but I'm eating the same thing and just taking away the thought of it. So
Yeah, I love macros, honestly, and for the past 3 years, that's what I've done. And I think a lot of people hate on macros because there was a whole period, like even when I was getting into fitness and working out, there was this whole like if it fits your macros like era. Like I remember watching these YouTube videos, like trying to get meal ideas, and it would be IIFYM or whatever the acronym was. But it was like people fitting in like going to Chick-fil-A and fitting stuff in, or like all these like protein cookies and stuff. And I think that's where it got a lot of backlash, which, yeah, that stuff is fine here and there, but these people are doing every single day. And you don't want to just pick things that fit your macros. You want to pick things that make you feel good, that digest good, that are whole food based, that are going to give you energy. So I think as long as you kind of have guidelines for yourself, macros is awesome. And it, like Alani and Caroline said, it gives you this flexibility that like you don't have on a meal plan, or like if you're following a structured set plan.
Absolutely. I think that was the biggest thing that I had to learn, because I mean, it all comes in waves. Like we've been, you know, in the extremes of everything in the gym and fitness and all that stuff, but it's still a journey. And I remember even when I was starting my first bodybuilding prep, it was macros. And I was kind of doing like what Caitlin was saying, where before I started that, like before I started bodybuilding, I was just tracking macros because I wanted to stay lean, grow muscle, like all that stuff when I was, you know, starting out in college. And I was fitting in like goldfish and like ice cream and stuff like that. And I would stress myself out if we would have plans and going out. So I was tracking my macros, but I don't think I was doing it in the best way. And it's not like, oh, you can't have those foods, like what Kate said, like what Caroline said. But I think once I learned how to approach my nutrition, I think that's when a lot of the food noise went away too. Was okay, I'm thinking about when I go in to make a meal, I'm thinking about, okay, what's my protein? Is it going to be chicken? Is it going to be fish? Is it going to be egg whites, Greek yogurt, a protein powder, you know, ground beef, something like that. And then I balance it with a carb. I balance it with a fat source. And now that I'm thinking about it like that and aiming for mainly whole foods, one, I think it makes it easier, like they're saying too. I feel better. Like when I was growing up, I had so many stomach issues. I remember going to a doctor and they like referred me to a specialist because after I would eat something, I would have like a sharp pain in my stomach. And I'm like, this isn't normal. But once I started bodybuilding actually and focusing more on incorporating mainly whole foods, it all went away. Like it was crazy. So I do digest better when I'm aiming for mainly whole foods and when I'm preparing most of my meals at home. But I do love the flexibility of like, if I have a craving, I can lean into that. And as long as I'm hitting my nutrition goals for the day, I know that I'm going to be on track. So I think it just kind of takes away some of that.
Well, like Alani, like you said a lot of people that are getting into this, if they went to a meal plan, they would feel like really restrictive. And I agree with that. I think that following macros kind of empowers beginners to see like, okay, these are carbs. Carbs is what's going to give me energy for my workouts. And then they learn like what foods have carbs and how to kind of build their plate. So they learn what carbs are. They learn what a good serving size of protein looks like in their meal, but also throughout the whole day. I think a lot of people, a lot of girls specifically, when they start tracking their macros and they're aiming for like 120 or 130 grams of protein, they're like, oh my God, this is a lot of protein. And I was severely under eating protein. But they figure out like what foods have protein, what foods have fats, and you can kind of play around with like how to build your day and what makes you feel good. And it's not something you'd have to follow long term if you understood macros. I think a lot of people that get into the fitness side of things and they only follow a meal plan, they kind of lack that education aspect of it. So that's why I'm a huge advocate for macros. Like even if you're in prep or even if your lifestyle, I think it has an appropriate fit for each side of the spectrum.
I agree. I think you touched on something really big there too. I think if you're getting into wanting to feel your best, wanting to look your best, wanting to eat good. I think it brings a lot of awareness is the biggest thing. Even if you're not being perfect about these things, I think when you start logging and utilizing tracking as a tool instead of something that's going to restrict you, I think it brings a lot of awareness. And yeah, I think people will argue like, oh, when you're tracking your food, it's restrictive. But when you learn how to use it as a tool to where you feel free to make good food decisions, even without tracking, I think that's what's so valuable about it. It's not something that we have to do forever, but it's something where it helps you to feel more in control and know that you're doing things that are going to better your goals. And just like you said, Kate, how to approach those meals and know how to build your meals and that type of thing.
Yeah, I honestly feel like you also learn exactly what your body needs. And I think that that's been the biggest thing for me recently is because, like, low key right now, I feel better eating 300 grams of carbs than when I was eating 150. But I never, ever would have thought that that's what my body needed or wanted. And now that I'm putting that much carbs in my body, I'm like actually learning, like, wow, my body actually does need this. So.
What are
So
some
true.
things? What are some things you guys find like people make the mistake when tracking their macros? Are there any that come to your mind?
I would say and this goes along with what Caroline was saying too, I think still leaning into structure as much as you can and preparation as much as you can. I think that is what I was missing is I would just go all out my day. I would pick up, frozen chicken tenders and throw them in there. And at the end of the day, I was like, why am I over on carbs and under on fat and under on protein? So I think learning how to build solid meals and have structure with your meal is a lot of times the missing piece. And I think that's why it comes from like having your calorie calculator, right? Where you go online and it tells you your carbs and fats and all that stuff is great. But I think learning how to actually structure your nutrition and diving into that. And a lot of times that means hiring a coach. Even if it's just lifestyle, even if it's not bodybuilding, I think that that's so valuable. And I think that's why I think all three of us can speak to that. That's why I love being an online fitness coach and nutrition coach so much, is because you're able to give people that structure and teach them it, because it is like a learning process. I would say that's the biggest thing.
I would also say learning the percentage of kind of what carbs to eat, what fats to eat, and what proteins, because I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, I need no carbs, so I'm going to eat, a huge amount of protein, or, oh, I need no protein, I'm going to eat a huge amount of carbs, but really figuring out how to split it up evenly to properly give your body like each proper percentage of what it needs for specific carbs, fats, and proteins.
Yeah.
Totally. I think that's another big thing too, is like, there's a purpose to each of those macronutrients. Like carbs are super important, proteins are super important, fats are super important, but they're all different. Like, for example, I think you guys can speak to this too, is if I'm about to go work out, I'm thinking not only about the macros in that meal, but also the purpose of the foods that I'm doing. I want higher carbs. I want a moderate amount of fats. I want a good amount of protein so that I'm digesting quickly. So would I choose something like, cream of rice or jasmine rice or adding a lot of berries before my workout because those are going to digest quicker? Absolutely. And then if it's something like a rest day where I want to be, more full throughout the day, I actually was like just eating my meal. I chose something more like cauliflower rice, adding avocado, things like that are going to be a little bit slower digesting. So I think that's huge too, is like understanding how those foods react with your body.
And this isn't something like I see like my clients doing, but it's something I wanted to bring up because I know a lot of people don't like realize this. I feel like if you've been doing this a while, you may, but beginners, when you're weighing your food, like chicken or like your rice, any meat, whatever, a lot of people I've found they will be weighing their protein or their carb cooked, but they're tracking the raw weight. So that's just something to be aware if you're tracking macros. It doesn't matter if you track raw or cooked. You just kind of want to keep it consistent. I used to do raw, and then I was like, I am way too busy to just keep weighing out all my chicken raw and cooking it like 4-ounce portions, or like cooking 50 grams of raw weight rice. So I made this switch to start weighing all my food cooked. And whatever app you use, like if you use my Fitness Pal, I use Chronometer, or I used to use Chronometer. When you weigh out your stuff, you can put in the cooked entry or the raw entry, however you want to do it. That's just something I wanted to touch on because I know a lot of people don't realize, like, oh, there's 2 different variations I could be doing here.
Yeah, totally. I did the same thing. I remember my first prep, like I was still eating 6 meals a day and I was weighing out everything like raw because I knew that that was like how it was tracked on the barcode. So I was cooking 6 times a day. And I don't know how I did that. Like now I just ingredient prep. Like I talk about that all the time. I'm like, I literally just prepped a bunch of fish, a bunch of chicken, a bunch of beef, a bunch of sweet potatoes. And then I just, when it's time for a meal, I throw it in a bowl. I make a salad, whatever it is. But yeah, I think that's, gosh, that is so much easier. I can't imagine cooking every single meal.
So Alani, in your prep, you followed a meal plan, right?
I did.
So kind of talk about like the stress that the meal plan took off of you and maybe why you do that during prep.
Yeah. So I think for me, it's kind of a unique situation because I do have a good understanding of how to approach my meals. So I could have done it with macros. But while I'm in bodybuilding prep specifically, I like to just keep things very, very the same day to day. So I followed a meal plan. That way, there were less variables that are changing because it is in such an extreme setting, right? So that's something that I found for me. It takes some of the thinking out of it. But I only do that like when I'm in a prep because it's like so many variables. It's you're measuring your sodium, you're measuring your water intake. I'm making sure that like my digestion is smooth. When I'm in an off season or a lifestyle phase, when I'm not getting ready for stage, even if I am just doing like a mini cut, you know, like even for my wedding, like I want to stay lean. I don't need to be so precise with those things and so to the T. So I do like to incorporate some more flexibility. So I guess that's like why I would shift from one to the other. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm in an off season right now, which I've been in for over a year now. And until about the year point, I was doing macros and like it was fine. I love macros, like I said, but it had gotten to the point where I don't know, I was just like stressed out with planning my food out, even though I was pretty much eating the same thing every day. It was like plugging those numbers in. I told my coach, I want a plan and I want to be able to wake up and know exactly what I'm going to eat so I can make all my meals for the day and just run out the door. And I think that's important to note here. Like, if you want to switch from macros to meal plan, don't be scared to ask your coach if you work with a coach. But don't think just because you're going into prep, like you have to go to a meal plan. Like, if you live a very busy lifestyle or you honestly just like waking up knowing what you're going to eat, a meal plan is totally fine. Something my coach does for me is he also gives me the macros of each individual meal and like the food I eat. So if I ever needed to swap anything, I can. And I think that's important also to note here. Like, just because you're on this meal plan that says you have to eat 40 grams of jasmine rice, like if you run out of rice, get some cream of rice and like just be able to still be flexible, but also tracking macros kind of gave me the education to know, like, okay, if I run out of rice, I can just do cream of rice or rice cakes or whatever.
Absolutely. And I agree with that. And I think something that I had to learn as well, and I tell a lot of my clients, especially like that are lifestyle, this is kind of on the complete opposite spectrum. Because I think we're talking more so with like bodybuilding type people. I think for lifestyle type people, and I want to like speak to this more too, is a lot of times people think a meal plan is the answer when they're starting their journey. They're like, I don't want to think about it. I just want somebody to give me a meal plan. And this is something that I've talked through with a lot of my clients. And it's like, well, why do you want a meal plan? A lot of times it is because they think the meal plan is what's going to get them results. When at the end of the day, what it is finding that balance with your overall intake, learning how to approach your nutrition in a way that's going to be sustainable for you specifically, and getting your activity level where it needs to be. So I think big picture, I think some people think I'm tracking macros and it's not working for me, so I need a meal plan, or they're not doing anything right now and they're like, I need a meal plan, when at the end of the day, you just need to know how to approach your nutrition. So I think there's two sides of the spectrum there as well.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to what's going to work for you, where you're at in your journey, what you're doing on your journey, how busy your life is. And it's really going to depend on person to person because, like, for me right now, I don't have a super busy life, but I just find that following a meal plan with macros works for me. Alani, right now, your post show, you want to be flexible. So you're doing macros. And Kate, you live a busy lifestyle and you're a nurse. And so a meal plan just works for you. And, none of these are good or bad ways to approach it. It just depends on what works for you.
Something I wanted to talk about too is like I think when people are on macros versus a meal plan, let's say they're doing good, they're eating their meals, and maybe they slip up or not slip up, but they have like something like a protein bar or something. They had to stop at a quick gas station. I feel like people that are on macros are more flexible with situations like that and they'll work it in. Where I've talked to people, clients that I have on a meal plan where they had that protein bar and then the rest of the day just went down like a slippery slope. So I think macros are beneficial in this situation, but I also think those that are on a meal plan, they can maybe learn like, okay, I had to swap this in. How can I still hit my meal plan for the rest of the day?
Yeah.
But that's also why I'm an advocate for macros too, because I just love the flexibility of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that it really just depends person to person. But yeah, I hope that this like helped a lot of people like work through that as well and kind of bring awareness to. I think we always talk about like the gym and the workout plans. And I know last week's episode was we talked a lot about like training versus working out. So that's a big thing, is really dialing in your training and making sure that you are building muscle. But a lot of times that missing piece is your nutrition. And the best way to dial that in is whatever works for you in your lifestyle. So just bringing attention to eating is one of those biggest things. So I hope that this episode was helpful for you guys. Is there anything else you guys wanted to touch on before we wrap up?
No.
No, just kind of want to say like there's no best one. Honestly, you shouldn't do macros and you shouldn't do meal plan. You should only do what works for you and makes you feel good, and that works with your lifestyle.
Absolutely.
But I think that's everything.
Amazing.
We have a fun episode planned for next week, so you guys will need to stay tuned for that one.
Yeah, I can't believe this is episode 7 already.
Yeah.
So crazy.
I've been getting some really good feedback. So just thank you guys so much for watching and honestly just reaching out because it makes my day. Someone texted me or DM'd me last night after I got off of work and it was a rough day, but them just like sending me that message being like, hey, we listened to your podcast and we love what you guys are doing. Like it makes me feel so good. And I wish like I would have had something to listen to when I was coming up and want to learn more.
Yeah.
So, all right. I think that's everything for today's podcast. We'll catch you guys next week.
Bye.
We'll see you next week. Bye.